Welcome back to the table. Today, Emily and I are not going to be talking to you about Marrakesh, the base game. We're going to be talking to you about Marrakesh, Camels, and Nomads. This is the new expansion for Marrakesh, one of our favorite games.
We always wanted more content, and here you go, more Marrakesh content.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for, I think.
There's quite a lot in this little box.
A ton of content on this, and we got the lowdown from Queen Games at Gen Con pretty late at night. And it was a lot of information to absorb. So Emily and I have spent the last about hour and a half really going through that, trying to understand all of what these different modules brings. And there's 7 modules we're going to go over. I can promise you we're not going to talk at all about how you play Marrakesh in this game. If you want to know that, watch the 108 different videos that we've already done on it. But we are going to go through each module, and there are some that are bigger than others. But I can tell you, all of these bring a lot to this game that already had quite a bit going on for it.
Yes, exactly.
We're not going to do them in order either.
No.
The name is Camels and Nomads. Well, we're going to go Nomads, then Camels. And those are probably the biggest ones of the modules.
Yeah,
so Nomads.
Nomads. So what do we need more of in this game but Keshi, right? So we got a new Keshi type.
That's our favorite part of the game.
I love the Keshi. So I'm very happy to have a new type of Keshi. These are the dark blue ones, and they're the Nomads. So what the new Nomads are going to do is that each time we're drafting, a Nomad will come out that we can draft as well. Just one. So one person can get them. The Nomad is special because he can go anywhere on the board, except for the souk, so not the marketplace, but anywhere else he can be there. I have to pay, though, a water and a date to get him.
Water and a date to get him when you're doing the draft.
Which is kind of expensive, right? But he's great because wherever he sits on my board, each round I can move him. It's going to cost me a coin, but he can just move around the board and he can be part of that. You know, if I'm needing more dates to get the 10 points at the end, he can become my last date and in my plantation, and that's pretty easy. Or he can make my powers much higher as I'm going through them, as I'm trying to take actions. I think that one's really going to be game-changing, the Nomads, and when you want to get them on the board and when you want to move them around.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there was not much opportunity. Well, there's no opportunity really to sort of fluidly adjust anything that's going on in your player board in the base game. And now that changes completely. Because you might get one, you might get two, you might get more than a couple Nomads.
You might just go all in on them.
It's going to be costly. Again, you only have to pay that coin if you want to move them. So worst case, you could buy the Nomad and treat it as another wild and put it wherever you want. But it could be very interesting because if you've played Marrakesh, you know, you might start down a path and think, I'm going to go heavier on this game. And then because people drafted what you wanted, then you find yourself, you just have 1 or 2 Keshi there. And you're like, you know what? I could just abandon that.
Yes.
If you put Nomads there, you can basically move them now. So like you can kind of abandon or better abandon some of those places to go on to sort of greener pastures and try to get more out of what you couldn't before.
It's definitely gave you more flexibility, right? If you're going in saying like, I want to do the river, but everyone's taking blue, well, now you got the Nomad. So you can still do the river if you want.
Yeah,
or whatever you're going
it'll be
for.
Interesting. I think when you first play with the Nomads, everyone's going to be the first opportunity they're going to be
trying to get it.
But there's going to be times where it's your turn to draft and the Nomad's sitting there and you don't have a date and a water, maybe. Although that's a bad situation to be in. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But that is the first of the 7 modules. The next one is Camels. And this is also a big one. And by big, I mean big. As you can see here on the table, we don't even have everything on the table. The lower half of our player boards are off screen. The very top of the camel track is off screen. But you can see here, this is a giant board that sits alongside here. And it is a camel track that has 30 spaces. Each player is going to have a camel in their player color that starts right here. And you're going to move that camel around the track, if you want to, throughout the game. This is another place to use Keshi because when you take a Keshi, for any purposes in the game, when you're drafting or if there's something that gives you a free Keshi, normally you would be placing that somewhere on your player board like we just discussed. You can instead take that Keshi and place it over there in your player color column underneath your camel to move your camel along the track. Now, it's not just that simple. Every different colored Keshi you put over there is going to help move your camel a little further. So if you just have one color and you add a Keshi, it just moves 1. But if you have 2, it moves further, all the way up to moving up to 4 spaces when you add like a 7th or 8th different colored Keshi over there. So it's going to benefit you from putting a variety of Keshi over there, but I can already say, we haven't played with this expansion yet, but we're both sitting here thinking, this is going to have a huge impact on your player board by putting Keshi over there. That's a lot of Keshi to be putting over there that you would normally put over here.
It is, but there's a big incentive to doing it, right? So as we're going along, you're getting other Keshis. If you're passing these lines, you're paying a little bit to keep going further, and you're doing better than your opponents. You're giving them this camel dung if you can get significantly ahead of them.
Yes, there is camel dung in this game. I don't know that there's another game on the market that has camel dung, so
and they're going to be negative points, so you don't want it.
You don't, just like real life, you don't want camel dung.
But at the end of each season, you're going to be able to trade in the Keshis you've stored over here for different benefits, right? And so while you might be going for different colors so you can move your camel farther, you might also go for similar colors because you might say like, oh, this round white is going to give me 2 dinar each. And maybe I have some supply things that are going to cost a lot of coins. Well, this is a really easy way to get them at the end of the round is if I just put a bunch of white on here, I'll move up the camel just a tiny bit, but I'll get all the supplies I need.
Yeah, there is quite a bit to think about here. It's not just a simple camel race, but everything we just said, and to underscore what Emily just said, when you look at those tiles, and those tiles there's 3 tiles, one at the end of each season. Think of these kind of like a combination between the river bonus tiles or the evaluation tiles, and maybe even the luxury goods trade action, where you're trading Keshi to get a thing. So not only are you putting different colors over there to move your camel, but like you said, a lot of the variable might be what colors do I want to put over there because, oh, we're getting rid of white now to get 2 points or to get rid of dung. And the bottom bonuses are pretty juicy.
Yes, they're very big. Like that one is to get the river bonus again. So, I mean, you could just be like, I'm not doing the river at all, but I am doing the camel race, and the camel race is going to be enough for me to get it.
Yeah, not to mention, we didn't mention this, the camel race has a lot of points attached to it too. Yeah. If you're first at the end, you're getting 16 points. If you happen to cross the finish line, you're going to get a bonus 5 points. So just more points to score there, and a lot of different things going on. And plus, there are, I think, 6 of those prize tiles that are out there, double-sided. So there's 12 different ones that you could possibly have. Again, a lot like those river tiles.
Yes.
So the next one is going to be, and this is probably going to be a fan favorite, it is the home buildings.
The home buildings. So these are essentially player powers, right? And they're going to give you variable setups.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to start with a little something to get you going. Instead of just the date, the water, the dinar, you're going to start with a Keshi. So mine is the date factory. I'm going to start with one of the green Keshis. I'm going to start with 3 dates, a water, and now we're also starting all with one of the 3 level scrolls.
Which is huge. This is one of the things, Emily, we both love the game, but one of the things that we always wanted was maybe a scroll to kick things off. Because one thing is the scrolls, a lot of people don't tap the scrolls all the way up to the 7s. It's a very hard thing to do. But having one of those scrolls to start with, it just psychologically puts people in mind of like, oh, what are these scrolls all about? And you get to take 3 scrolls out of a bag of the power 3s and pick one of them. So you're going to be able to choose between 3, probably a pretty good scroll to kick things off.
Well, and on top of that, so that scroll might give you like an ongoing ability or once per round thing that you're doing, but you also in your player power have an ongoing thing most likely as well. So like mine is ongoing throughout the game. I get to, anytime I buy a new luxury good, I get to pay 1 less for it.
That's always nice.
So it's incentivizing me to diversify and get different luxury goods, and I don't have to pay quite as much.
Yeah, and mine doesn't have an ongoing power other than the fact that it comes with a replacement tile for the Gemma Al-Fana. So this is basically got more entertainers on it so that as I'm using it, it's a juicier reward as I'm tapping these. Like one of the spaces has 4 spectators. So you're able to get quite a bit more from the Gem Alphanar. But that is sort of a more straightforward one. There is, again, several of these with all sorts of different powers. And, you know, we always love variable player powers.
Well, and I love the fact that you're starting out with something too, right? So you're kind of having like a way to kind of go through the game. Now there's so much you can do. You're kind of like, okay, and I should probably combo it with this, right?
Yeah, so maybe a little guidance, but also a little bit of a kickstart, almost like a Terraforming Mars prelude, if you will. but for Marrakesh.
And if you wanted more options, then we also just have additional new things.
Yeah, new things.
So one of the big ones is that we're going to get new supply tiles.
Yep.
These new supply tiles are not just like, okay, we have to feed our people 3 things or else get negative points. Now we have to feed our people either 4 or 5 different resources.
Yeah, these supply tiles, so the way it's going to work in the standard version of using these is everyone at the beginning of the game is going to get 3 of the standard ones. These are those ones that everyone dreads in Marrakesh.
Yes.
Well, you're going to dread these even more on one hand. On the other hand, you're going to like them. These cost more, and if you don't pay them, there's a bigger penalty. But there are abilities that come along with them. All of these ones that cost 4 resources have a once per season thing that's going to happen that allows you to, for instance, this one lets me swap 2 of my Keshi.
Which is huge.
Which is a giant thing. Usually that swap happens, I think, maybe on a scroll and this one time right up here. But to be able to do that and know that you're going to be able to do that throughout the game is big. And when you get these tiles, and Emily hasn't even talked about the really big ones, you get these and you can decide, do I want to use the 3? Do I want to use one of the big ones and maybe 2 of the small ones? And you place them wherever you want, just like the normal game. So if you place these powers in that first spot, good news, you're going to tap that power more often. But bad news, you have to pay these every season. So it means you're going to have to pay that big cost supply tile 3 times, which is pretty tricky. But the big ones are huge.
And these ones are even bigger, right? So you're going to cost 5. They're going to be negative 8 points if you can't do it. But their ongoing abilities, like this top one is, whenever I take any luxury good, I get a discount of 1.
So you see where she's going. She's
so
got
I'm comboing this.
And that building where she's going to be getting significant discounts on the luxury goods. You can really build a completely different game in terms of scoring points much greater than you would have scored before in certain categories. Speaking of which, the luxury goods. That's another new thing that's coming. There's a few new luxury goods. And I will have to say, too, a lot of these extra things and modules, there are pieces and parts that require some of the other modules to be used. And the rule book that we had, which is a work in progress, was very clear about like, hey, don't use this luxury good unless you're using the camel track and things like that.
Yeah, it's clear on when to put which things together. You could put it all together and just know it's just all in there, but you could also pick and choose a little bit. But those new luxury goods, there are 2 types. One is going to be used with the camels specifically, and it's going to cost 6 now, right? Which is pretty expensive, but it's 16 points, and each time you'll get to move your camel 2. Yeah. And then you also have the falcon, which is the most expensive one. It's going to be
7?
7, which means that you're not just paying the suit resources, right? You're also paying something else off of your board.
So you're sacrificing a Keshi somewhere else, not just the purple, yellow, and orange. And in addition, though, you're getting 20 points for these falcons, plus each one of them has a special ability that happens right then. So these are pretty significant. I mean, just these points alone are huge.
Huge.
And when you consider that there are new Oasis tiles as well, some of which actually tie into these, they can really explode because some of the new Oasis tiles, again, are usable with certain modules. One of these, a few of them are associated with the luxury goods.
Sure.
And one of which gives you more points if you got the Falcon. So I think it's capped at having 2 of the Falcons. So you get another 16 points, 8 per Falcon, on top of the Falcons you got. That's like 56 points
56
just
points.
from 3 things. Getting 2 Falcons and having that tile, 56 points. That's not insignificant.
No, it's not. And then there's some new Oasis about the camel and about the other luxury goods that are coming out, about the nomads themselves. So it's just adding more on to the game that we already had. This is a lot of game to be playing with together.
It is a lot of game to be playing with, no matter what the player count, because the last module is a solo mode. This is going to be designed by David Turtsey. The components we didn't have everything on hand, but I can tell you from the pictures we saw, there is a full-fledged sort of automa board with these 15 tiles that come into play that you're going to be using to play solo, which I think at this point, if Marrakesh, if they put out an expansion like this that had 6 modules, but not a solo, that would have been a mistake. So they have a really robust solo mode coming for Marrakesh. And honestly, we're big fans if you can't tell. And we're rabid to play with some of these, although I have to admit I'm a little intimidated to play with all of them right away.
Yeah, I think I would do a little bit at a time.
A little bit at a time.
Nomads and then Camel.
What's the first one?
First one has to be Nomads.
Oh, Nomads.
No, it has to be Nomads.
Oh, because
I need
of
more Keshi.
You want more Keshi. Mine would be the home buildings.
The player powers.
Yeah, player powers, come on.
Well, yeah, and starting with the 3 scroll, we literally talked about that. I think our first party, we were like, what if we started with the scroll? That'd be a cool homebrew rule. And then,
they listened.
There you go.
They didn't really listen. They didn't hear us even say that. But anyway, that is the modules for the expansion. Camels and Nomads and much, much more is what they should have called it. For Marrakesh, if you have any questions at all, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and try to answer whatever we can. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.